Kindness doesn't make you loved. It makes you a target. Let's talk about why the softest hearts get cut first. 1. The empathy trap. Your empathy is your greatest strength and your biggest liability. Manipulators can sense it like sharks smell blood. They know you'll say yes, explain yourself, and apologize for existing. The more understanding you are, the easier you are to guilt. You don't need to be cruel to survive. Just stop assuming everyone deserves your compassion. Some people don't need your help. They need your absence. 2. The respect paradox. The kinder you are, the less people respect you, at least until you learn how to weaponize boundaries. Psychology calls it the benevolence penalty. When you're too accommodating, people unconsciously assume your lower status. You train them to expect discounts on your dignity. But when you finally say no, watch how fast they call you selfish. That's not selfishness. That's you ending the free trial of your kindness. 3. The reciprocity illusion. You think that giving makes people give back. It doesn't. It just shows them how much they can take. Studies in social exchange theory prove that overgivers often attract undergivers because balance feels like loss to a taker. The moment you stop overextending, they'll accuse you of changing. You didn't change. You just stopped financing their comfort with your exhaustion. 4. The guilt reflex. Good people are trained to feel guilty for saying no. It's a reflex, not a choice. That reflex was born in childhood. The be nice conditioning that taught you that other people's comfort is more important than your own peace. Every time you say no, your brain interprets it as a threat to belonging. Psychologists call this moral guilt conditioning. Your body produces anxiety as punishment for protecting yourself. It's why your heart races when you try to set a boundary, even if you're completely justified. And toxic people love this. They use guilt as a remote control for your conscience. The more you explain, justify, or apologize, the more control they gain. Here's the brutal truth. Guilt is not proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you've been trained to feel bad for putting yourself first. Learn to recognize that anxiety as a false alarm, not a moral failure. 5. The helper's high hangover. Being kind feels amazing until it doesn't. Helping people triggers dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals that make love and purpose feel good. But like any high, it fades. And when you use helping as your main source of self-worth, you start chasing it compulsively. You become addicted to being needed. You stop asking, do they deserve this? And start asking, will they still like me if I don't? That's how the helper turns into the hostage. There's a dark twist here. Users can sense the addiction. They feed it by calling you selfless, amazing, the only one who understands. They're not complimenting you. They're locking you in. Eventually, the kindness that once gave you meaning just gives you migraines. You don't need less kindness. You need withdrawal. 6. The compassion con game. Some people mistake your kindness for weakness. Others test it on purpose. They'll tell you sad stories, exaggerate pain, or create chaos, all to measure your reaction. The faster you rush to fix it, the faster they know how to use you. It's called compassion baiting. Psychologically, it works because your empathy triggers your brain's threat reduction system, the urge to resolve others' distress so you can feel calm. Manipulators hijack that instinct. They manufacture distress, and you supply the solution. You're not helping. You're soothing the anxiety they created. The most dangerous people don't need to lie. They just need to look sad while watching who rushes to help first. Once they know, they'll never stop knocking. So, next time your instincts scream, "Help," pause. Ask, would they do the same for me? If the answer is no, close the door, politely but permanently. 7. The mirror illusion. Kind people see others through the lens of their own intentions. You assume others mean well because you do. Psychologists call this the false consensus bias, the belief that most people share your morals, empathy, and conscience, but they don't. When you project your goodness onto others, you ignore red flags, not because you're blind, but because your mind edits them out to preserve your worldview. They didn't mean to. They just need love. Maybe I'm overreacting. That's not compassion. That's denial dressed as hope. The truth? You can't love someone into integrity. You can't nurture empathy into someone who uses it as a weapon. See people as they show you they are. not as you wish they were. That's not cynicism. It's emotional realism, the only kind that keeps kind hearts alive. E8. The boundary blur. Kind people don't lack limits. They just forget where they left them. Boundaries aren't walls. They're instructions for how to treat you. But chronic givers rarely post those instructions anywhere. Instead, they assume people will just notice when they've gone too far. Spoiler, they won't. Psychologists call this the assumed empathy bias, the belief that others can sense your discomfort the way you sense theirs. But they can't. They only notice when your silence turns into resentment. And by then, you've already built a quiet prison out of your own politeness. You can't expect others to honor rules you never stated. If someone repeatedly crosses your line, it's not because they didn't see it. It's because you keep erasing it for them. Boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal which ones were real. 9. The nice guy. Curse, there's a reason. Nice people finish last. They're not actually nice. They're compliant. The nice guy or nice girl isn't motivated by generosity, but by fear. Fear of rejection, conflict, or being disliked. So they turn kindness into a strategy, a transactional offer that says, if I'm pleasant enough, you'll treat me well. But people don't respect doormats. They wipe their feet on them. Social psychologists call this impression management, shaping your behavior to gain approval. It works short-term, but it kills authenticity. Eventually, people sense the performance. They feel the subtle desperation behind your politeness. Being kind isn't about being agreeable. It's about being honest without cruelty and firm without apology. The nice version of you gets attention. The authentic version gets respect. 10. The hero complex. Every kind person secretly dreams of being someone's savior. It's noble, until it becomes self-destruction in a cape. You take on broken people, chaotic partners, impossible projects, all because helping gives you meaning. The psychological term, the savior complex. It's built on a lie, that your worth depends on how much pain you can absorb for others. You call it loyalty. Therapists call it codependency. It's not compassion, it's control. Deep down, you're trying to fix others so you don't have to face your own helplessness. Here's the twist. Real heroes don't rescue people from their problems. They teach them how to stand up. If you're constantly saving people who keep drowning in the same drama, maybe you're not in a rescue mission. You're in a loop. And loops don't end until someone stops swimming toward disaster. 11. The emotional ATM syndrome. Ever notice how certain people only text when they're falling apart? Congratulations, you're their emotional ATM. They make a withdrawal every time life gets tough. Sympathy, time, reassurance, validation. But when you need support? Sorry, I've just been so busy. This dynamic isn't friendship. It's asymmetric emotional labor. Psychologists found that one-sided emotional support triggers the same fatigue as physical overwork. You're emotionally bankrupt because you keep loaning your stability to people who never repay it. The manipulation is subtle. They'll say things like, "You're the only one I can talk to," a compliment disguised as a chain. You start believing that your purpose is to fix their chaos. But healthy relationships aren't rescue centers. They're power outlets. Both people get recharged. If you leave every conversation drained, stop calling it friendship. Call it what it is, emotional debt collection. 12. The politeness prison. You weren't born polite, you were trained to be agreeable at the cost of honesty. From childhood, you learned that saying no makes people frown, that disagreeing makes you difficult, so you became fluent in soft lies. It's fine, no problem, don't worry about it. Every time you swallow discomfort to avoid tension, you reinforce your own invisibility. Social scientists call this the likability trap. The pressure to appear pleasant suppresses authentic emotion, especially in kind people. You start performing peace instead of living it. You smile through disrespect, laugh through discomfort, and call it being mature. But politeness without boundaries is just self-erasure with good manners. Real maturity is being able to say, "That doesn't work for me," without turning it into an apology. The world doesn't need more polite people. It needs more honest ones who are brave enough to stay kind and firm at the same time. 13. The silent endurance trap. Kind people don't explode. They endure. They don't shout. They simmer. They collect disappointments like emotional receipts, file them neatly under "it's okay," and keep going. But the body keeps score. Chronic emotional suppression releases stress hormones equivalent to physical trauma. Psychologists call it fawn fatigue, the exhaustion from constantly appeasing others to stay safe or liked. You smile through irritation, nod through disrespect, and convince yourself it's maturity. But your nervous system knows better. You're not calm, you're dissociating politely. The most terrifying part? The world rewards you for it. You're so chill. You never complain. You're the easy one. Translation: you're the one we can take advantage of without consequences. Here's your warning. Silence doesn't make you peaceful. It just makes you invisible to the people you're bleeding for. 14. The emotional recycling loop. Ever notice how the same kind people keep ending up with the same toxic personalities? Different faces, same chaos? That's not coincidence. That's emotional conditioning. Your brain is wired to find comfort in familiarity, even when that familiarity hurts. If you grew up earning love by being useful, your adult relationships will repeat that script. People will love you when you're convenient. It's not that you attract bad people. It's that your kindness has a password, and only takers know how to type it. Psychologists call this trauma repetition. Your mind subconsciously recreates the emotional environments it once survived to prove it can finally win. But healing isn't about winning the same game. It's about refusing to play. Breaking the loop starts when you stop trying to earn peace from people who profit from your chaos. 15. The energy vampire effect. You know that one person who drains you just by existing near them? That's not drama, it's biology. Stanford studies show that exposure to chronically negative people increases cortisol by up to 45%. Your body literally enters fight or flight mode around them. Empaths and chronic helpers are prime targets because they unconsciously regulate other people's emotions. You walk away tired because you've been subconsciously doing their emotional labor, decoding tone, adjusting your energy, soothing tension that isn't yours. It's called emotional contagion, and kindness makes you the perfect host. The more you care, the more you absorb. The more you absorb, the more exhausted you feel. And exhaustion is how manipulators win. You can't fight when you're too tired to feel. So next time someone leaves you drained, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "Whose emotions am I carrying home?" 16. The unpaid therapist syndrome. Every kind person becomes someone's unpaid therapist at some point. You listen, you advise, you soothe, and they leave feeling better while you stay behind feeling worse. It's not friendship, it's emotional outsourcing. There's a cruel twist in psychology here. People who consistently listen more than they talk tend to be misclassified as stronger, more stable, and emotionally safer, which means they become dumping grounds for others' unprocessed pain. But absorbing pain doesn't make you wise. It just makes you full of other people's noise. And the irony? The people who vent to you often get annoyed when you try to share your struggles. Why? Because your role in their story isn't human. It's supportive character. You don't need to stop caring. You just need to charge emotional rent. Not in money, but in reciprocity. If they can't offer that, end the session permanently. 17. The kindness debt manipulation. This is the deadliest trap of all. When your kindness becomes a currency and people start keeping receipts. Manipulators love to remind you of everything they've done for you, but the dark secret is that they're often just cashing in favors you never agreed to. This is called reciprocal guilt priming. They'll phrase it like gratitude, "After everything I've done for you," but what they're really saying is, "You owe me obedience." Your brain, wired for fairness, panics at the idea of being ungrateful. So you comply. You repay debts that don't exist. Kind people fall for this because they keep score against themselves. Here's the truth. Real generosity doesn't generate invoices. If someone's kindness comes with a payment plan, it was never kindness. It was credit with emotional interest. And the interest rate always rises the moment you start saying no. 18. The fixer's curse. You see broken people as projects, and that's the problem. You think if you love them hard enough, they'll heal. That your patience will rewrite their childhood. That your support will melt their bitterness. But here's the truth. Psychologists never sugarcoat. You can't heal what profits from staying broken. The fixer's curse is fueled by control disguised as compassion. You're not helping them for free. Yeah, you're trying to create emotional safety by repairing everyone around you. But people who benefit from their own dysfunction will never get better just because you suffer harder. Real love doesn't drag people across the finish line. It stands at the start line and says, if you're not walking with me, I'm not carrying you. You're not their therapist. You're the collateral damage of their unresolved pain. 19. The selective amnesia effect. Toxic people have one of psychology's greatest superpowers, forgetting your kindness the second it stops serving them. You can spend years being patient, supportive, and understanding, but say no once, and suddenly you're selfish, cold, or ungrateful. This isn't memory loss. It's emotional accounting. They don't record your good deeds because that would make them indebted to you. And takers hate debt, so they rewrite the past to protect their entitlement. Research in cognitive dissonance shows that people distort memories to justify their behavior. So when a manipulator hurts you, their brain reconstructs the story. I had to do it. They were overreacting. Don't waste time proving your goodness to someone committed to misremembering it. You can't out-narrate someone who edits reality to keep their ego clean. 20. The emotional inflation phenomenon. Kindness, like currency, loses value when you print too much of it. The more freely you give it away, time, attention, understanding, the less people value it. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because the human brain normalizes generosity. Behavioral economics calls it hedonic adaptation. What once felt like a gift becomes the new baseline. Your effort becomes invisible. Your above and beyond becomes bare minimum. The moment you stop over-delivering, they'll accuse you of withdrawing. No, you're not withdrawing. You're simply returning to fair market value. Kindness has to be scarce to be sacred. If everyone can take, no one learns to treasure. 21. The moral high ground. Trap. One of the sneakiest ego traps for good people is believing that being kind automatically makes you better. You secretly think your selflessness gives you moral superiority, that your pain means you're pure. But self-sacrifice isn't sainthood. It's just self-neglect in disguise. This is called moral identity bias, the belief that goodness is measured by suffering. It's why kind people often stay in toxic dynamics, thinking, I'm the bigger person. You're not the bigger person. You're the quieter hostage. Real morality doesn't require martyrdom. You can have compassion and boundaries. You can care deeply and walk away. The world doesn't need more bleeding hearts. It needs healed ones that don't confuse exhaustion with virtue. 22. The hope addiction. Kind people are hope junkies. You don't fall for potential because you're stupid. You fall because you see possibility. You spot the good in people like metal detectors find coins. Every beep feels like proof that it's still worth digging. But hope can be hallucinogenic. Psychologists call this optimism bias, the brain's tendency to overestimate positive outcomes, even against all evidence. You tell yourself, they'll change. They didn't mean it. It's getting better. Hope keeps you there long after logic tells you to leave. But here's the punchline. Every manipulator knows how to weaponize hope. They don't have to change, they just have to promise to. So stop falling for potential. Potential is just the prettiest version of denial. 23. The kindness hangover. Every chronic giver knows this feeling, that emotional hangover that hits after being too nice for too long. You wake up drained, irritated, maybe even resentful, and you hate yourself for it. Because good people aren't supposed to feel that way. Right? Wrong. That's not guilt, that's emotional depletion. When your kindness outpaces your self-care, your brain literally burns out. Studies on compassion fatigue show it mimics depression. You lose empathy, motivation, even pleasure. It's not because you've stopped caring, it's because you cared past the red line. And yet, instead of resting, you double down. You give more to feel like yourself again. That's not kindness, that's addiction in disguise. You can't pour from an empty heart. You can only bleed. So take the hint your body's been screaming for years. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop being everyone's medicine. 24. The emotional ghosting reflex. When kind people finally snap, they don't explode, they vanish. After years of silence, accommodation, and swallowing pain, they simply disappear. No fights, no closure, just gone. That's not coldness. That's the body protecting itself. Psychologists call this delayed boundary enforcement. It's when someone represses anger for so long that the nervous system finally overrides politeness. One day, you wake up and realize you're done explaining. People who mistreated you will call it heartless. But they don't understand. The decision wasn't made that morning. It was made in 1,000 tiny moments they thought you'd forgotten. When a kind person ghosts you, it's not revenge. It's recovery. 25. The kindness control paradox. Kind people think kindness keeps the peace, but sometimes it keeps the problem. The more you try to maintain harmony, the more power you give to people who thrive in chaos. Your silence becomes their comfort zone. Psychologists call this peacekeeping control, the illusion that you can prevent conflict by absorbing it. You become the emotional sponge of every situation, terrified of friction. But conflict avoided is truth delayed, and truth always collects interest. You can't control how others act. You can. Only choose how long you let them rent space in your peace. True kindness doesn't mean keeping the room tidy for your abuser. It means evicting them, politely, permanently, and without forwarding their mail. 26. The awakening. Here's the most brutal truth of all. Being kind in a cruel world will break you until you realize it's not your job to be unbreakable. The final stage of emotional maturity isn't learning how to love everyone. It's learning who deserves your love and who only knows how to drain it. It's understanding that forgiveness doesn't always mean access, that compassion doesn't require contact, and that walking away isn't cruelty, it's clarity. When you stop using kindness as a shield, it becomes a sword, not to wound, but to protect. Because real kindness isn't about being easy to love, it's about being impossible to exploit. So tell me, which one of these hit you hardest? The empathy trap, the guilt reflex, the hope addiction? Drop it in the comments, not to confess, but to wake up. Because kindness isn't weakness, it's strength once you stop apologizing for it.